In ancient writings and in Jewish spiritual writings, the heart is the organ, the metaphor for the seat of your emotions, your feelings, your impulses, your instincts. Now, the heart is a very important, powerful tool which we value because our emotional reactions and attachments and expressions to ourselves, to other people, things around us are really what guide us in life. At the same time, the heart often has a mind of its own. And the mind of the heart is a very dangerous thing. The heart itself and the emotional component of the heart is really important to discover, to connect with, to master. But one should never trust the mind of the heart because the mind of the heart is very self-serving. Ultimately, the heart wants self-gratification. It wants pleasure. And we should always turn to the real mind, the mind of your mind, which is a more objective place that's able to analyze, discern, and truly evaluate right from wrong, not just pain and pleasure. Now, there are three paradigms of a person's relationship with their heart. The tzaddik, the purely, perfectly righteous person, libam b'shutam, their heart is in their control. They have completely eradicated any foreign thought, foreign force, the forces of the animal soul that want to distract the person. The tzaddik has eradicated that. And so they're in full control of all of their organs, all of their persona, and their heart and all of its emotions and its instincts and its impulses are completely guided only by the godly soul, by the godly intentions and purposes of its mind. That is the tzaddik. Far and few in between, but there's those special people. For most people, which is the Beinoni of it, as we've been learning, they don't have full control over their heart. Their heart has a voice, a mind of its own. The animal soul is very much alive in the heart. However, they do have a way to control the heart, and that is through accessing the mind and accessing the universal principle of all humankind, that the mind controls the heart. So by setting yourself up to be focused and vigilant in your state of mind, to be able to be contemplative and introspective and thoughtful and be able to think about and rationally understand the importance of God and goodness and the Torah, you're able to, through that, spill that over into the heart, to control the heart, to channel the heart in a certain way, even if not to be able to ensure that the arousal of the heart is a complete love and emotional attachment to goodness, but at least in the sense, as we learned in the previous chapter, that we can control the functional side of the heart, meaning the convictions of the mind are able to arouse the heart in a way that it can lead to the desire to perform the right thing. And that means we become perfect in our behavior. That is the Beinoni. And then is the Rasha. The Rasha is the sinner, the perpetual sinner, the person who's perpetually falling trap, making mistakes, failing, not staying on top of their game, not making the right choices in life. And about the Rasha, the Talmud tells us, libam birshutam, ahem birshut libam, which means they are controlled by their heart. Their heart, which is the natural seat of their animal soul and their instincts and their desires for self-gratification, for pleasure, for selfishness, for survival, without any altruism, without any pursuit for doing that which is right over wrong. That has taken full control over the person. So much so that this person becomes stuck. Because you would ask, why can't they turn to the tool of the mind? Why can't they exercise the power of mind controlling heart? No matter how much you become stuck in this vicious cycle of gravitating to and becoming attracted by all of these unhealthy behaviors, turn to the mind to try to gain control over the ship over here. And the answer is, for some Rishaim, for some sinners, even that won't work. They've completely lost control over themselves. Even turning to their mind to be able to regulate their heart is impossible anymore. They have become stuck. They're part of this endless, vicious cycle of this unhealthy attachment and emotions and impulses to, whether it's physically and emotionally unhealthy behaviors and attachments, or from a spiritual sense, which is what the Torah discusses, leading the way of sin. They've become so numb to doing that they've lost control over themselves. That is the Risha. And when you fall into that state, you feel stuck, you feel helpless, you feel like I'm never going to be able to get back on track. I'm stuck in this path. Alter Rebbe says, even though you've lost a lot of your tools, you can't even turn to your mind to try to help regulate what's going on over here, you're never stuck. There's always a chance to shake yourself up and wake yourself up. And that is a unique process described in this class today. The power of teshuvah, the power of repentance, the power of turning things around. How does that work? So the way the Alter Rebbe explains the teshuvah here, what's happened here is, at least from a spiritual perspective, but also from a psychological perspective, is you've created all kinds of barriers, all kinds of obstacles between your mind and your rational self and your heart and your irrational self. And you've allowed that heart and that irrational side of yourself to condition you, to overtake you in such a way that you've lost access to the sensible part of your mind. And so there are blockages. In the spiritual language of the Kabbalah, there are klipot. There are these layers of peels of spiritual barriers that have gotten in the way. And the only way to recover from that is to break them, is to shatter them, is to pierce through all of those obstacles. Until you remove them and break through them, you're never going to gain access into your rational side, getting back into your mind, into a clear place of living. This breaking, it's called breaking of the heart, a broken heart. Interesting, in the Torah talks about many kinds of sacrifices that were offered in the temple. And each time that we talk about sacrifices, we talk about sacrifices to God. And the name of God used in the Torah is the Yud K Vav K name of God, the Tetragrammaton, which is the highest name of God. It's the name of God's revelation, Yud K Vav K. There's never a sacrifice to the lower level of God, the name of Elokim. Elokim is the name of God, the God of concealment, the God that hides within nature, within the physical world. So the Torah is full of sacrifices to the revealed infinite God. Are there any sacrifices to the concealed finite God? So the answer is that in Tehillim, in Psalms, King David talks about such a sacrifice. He says, Zivchei Elokim, the sacrifices to the name of Elokim, Ruach Nishbara, Lev Nishbar, a broken spirit, a broken heart. Elokim, which is the name of God that is the godliness that is concealed. When a person is in a state of concealment, a person has lost their attachment to their soul, to their mind, and they're stuck under these layers, under these covers, these obstacles. The only way to work your way out of there is through breaking the heart. Breaking the heart is through having feelings of remorse and broken spirit and regret, and realizing how far you've gone lost down the broken path, and you've ended up in a very bad place, and you've lost full control over yourself. And the mental and the emotional workup of feeling of how lost you've become and having such bitter remorse over that, it's those emotions, has to be done right, which break you and which shatter those klipot and those barriers and start to allow yourself access back into your mind, back in your sensible place, to bring you to a place of clarity. That's why the very word teshuvah means repentance, or means returning to your former natural place. The way it's spelled in Hebrew is like two words, tashuv, hey. The hey at the end could be a separate word. Tashuv, the returning of, hey, the letter hey. What does it mean, returning the letter hey? So our souls are created in the image of God. The God image, Yud, K, Vav, K, the four letters of God's names, is reflected in our soul. What are those four letters of Yud, K, Vav, K in our persona? Yud is Chachma, is the initial state of consciousness in our mind. Hey is the expanded state of Bina, of understanding and contemplation and comprehension in our minds. Vav, the letter Vav, is the way you look at the direction of the Vav, the way it flows down, and also Vav, the numerical value of 6. Vav refers to the midot, our emotions, the primarily six emotions of our heart. So we have the process of the initial stage of consciousness flowing out to expanded contemplation, comprehension, then flowing down into the feelings, emotions of our heart. And then the final hey is the way it gets expressed in our outward self, in our behavior. In fact, the hey has 3 lines, and the 3 lines refer to the 3 garments of thought, speech, and words. That hey should be connected to the previous Yud Kei Vav, meaning our external behavior should always be a result of and connected with our inner consciousness. But the Rasha, the conditioned sinner, is somebody who their external behaviors have become completely detached from their inner soul, their inner spiritual side. And they've become lost, they've become disconnected. And you're now in this vicious cycle. And so teshuvah on this lowest level, on the simple level, means returning, restoring the hay, allowing that your thoughts, your words, and behaviors should regain a connection with your inner soul, the thoughts of your mind, the cognizance, the wisdom, the rationality, the sensibleness of your mind, and then allowing for a healthier emotions of the heart to be able to spill over into more responsible behavior. So long as you haven't done that teshuvah and you're trapped in that cycle of behavior, that is a metaphor for galut, for exile. Not just exile for you, but exile for your soul. Your soul is now trapped in your state of spiritual impurity. Not just exile for your soul, but exile for God. There's this Kabbalistic metaphor of galut hashchina, the exile of God. And because when God is within your soul, and when you lower your soul to those realms of the klipot and they become trapped by those spiritual abstractions, God too is in exile. So bringing redemption is not only redeeming you and restoring you back to your sensibleness and you back to the clarity of your mind, it's also bringing a redemption to God himself as well. So all is not lost for the Rasha. Sometimes you can fall very low and end up in a place that you feel completely overtaken by the waywardness of the heart, and you feel like there's no path back. You've lost a sense of clarity and vision in your life. You have at that time. You're disconnected. But through a process of teshuvah, of breaking those barriers, of waking yourself up, of shattering those klipot that surround you, you can once again gain entrance and a pathway to the sensibleness of your mind, which can now bring you to a state of clarity and vision. You can regain control of your life and continue your journey in a much more healthy way. And that concludes this chapter 17. God bless you. Have a great day.